I mean, I think if they didn't stop you would have said more. Yeah, that's very good. Okay. Well, great. All right. So, with God's grace, we're going to continue where we, remember there was a point yesterday where we said we're going to start from this point. So we'll do that. We'll finish yesterday's talk, and then we'll start on talking about anxiety. So where we, sorry if you were awake, then this is repetition for you yesterday. If you were not awake, then this is brand new information yesterday from today. So when serving others, you have to ask yourself these questions because you don't want to be an obstacle to the work of God in other people, right? Like God is working through you. Remember, God doesn't need you. Remember that. God doesn't need you. Like He's not like, Andrew. Oh, Andrew is not available. I can't do my work. No, that's not how God. But God blesses us. He says, oh, hey, I'm going to go do something. You want to come and join me? I'll get you involved. And you're like, oh, okay, thank you, Jesus. And then Jesus says, oh, and do this and do that. And you're like, and you do it. And then you say, look, Jesus, what I did. He's like, yeah, good job. And then slowly you're benefiting from serving, right? But you don't want any of your flaws, and we all have flaws, okay? Please, I'm the first one, but we all have flaws. You don't want any of your flaws or biases or assumptions or poor skills to interfere with the work of God in the service, right? You want to get out of the way. You want to say, God, whatever you want to do, do it. And that's why we learn, right? Because we want to get out of the way. We want to be the best we can be for God to work. So you have to ask yourself how much of your life experience is clouding your ability to understand the other person's experience. Does what the person is going through, does that remind you of anything in your own life? If it is, or maybe you're trying to relate too much and you're not trying to understand what they're going through. Also, sometimes you think if you relate to the other person that what worked for you is going to work for them. And you can't do that, right? You have to think more broadly. Also, what's your current emotional state? Well, for a lot of these, I have stories that are actually really help make the point. One time, after a feast, after one of the midnight, the feasts that happen overnight, and we go downstairs to the church and to the food hall, and everyone's feasting and eating, and then two of the servants got into a big fight over something that happened during liturgy, right? And then Abuna came and he said, guys, it's 1 a.m. No, stop. We're all tired. There's nothing to discuss here, right? And so sometimes we don't even know our own emotional state. Maybe we're stressed, maybe we're anxious, maybe we're tired, right? So you have to know that about yourself. No one's going to tell you. The person you're serving is not going to tell you that you're stressed, right? You have to know if you're stressed and if your stress is interfering with your service. We said, what do you want to get out of this interaction? Maybe you want to get the credit for solving the problem. Maybe you want a specific outcome, and you're not listening to what outcomes the person is prepared for. What don't you know? And I said, you never underestimate the extent of your own ignorance. You always don't know something, right? This applies to everything. Every interaction, you always don't know something. So ask yourself, what don't I know? Which area of their life did I not cover? And it helps, for example, to think of the dimensions we've been talking about: physical, emotional, intellectual, spiritual, relational, social. We spoke about those things. Ask yourself about all those things. What didn't I cover when I'm in the person I'm serving? What questions didn't I ask? What don't I know? And what other resources are available to this person? So, and then we said there are 5 skills. Number 1, move into and sit in the pain. Imagine yourself, somebody comes to you with pain and you hug the pain. You're not moving away. You're not getting anxious. You're leaning into it. Someone says, I struggled with this. You have to move forward. And what do you mean? Tell me more, right? Don't pull away, because that's literally what Jesus did, right? He in the business world, we have a phrase of people running towards the burning building, and some people run away from the burning building, right? The person who's running towards the burning building, they see there's a fire and they go towards the fire to help. That's us. All of us are that person. There's fires everywhere. And you have to move towards the fire, right? Slow down and focus as much as you can. So don't try to rush. Slow down the conversation. Watch how you speak. Watch your interrupting when you're speaking. So you don't have to, like, somebody says something, you don't have to fill the silence immediately after. Just slow down, be patient, nod, say like just show that you're listening. You don't have to always say something all the time, and stay very focused on them. Ask at least 5 questions. Become very good at asking questions. I'm going to give you some examples in the next talk. Remember, each person's experience is true for them. Do not, like I gave you the example yesterday, do not, somebody says, one of the young people you're serving says, oh, my parents don't love me. And the first thing that comes out of your mouth is, of course your parents love you. Don't you know everything they do for you? That's not going to help. That's not going to help in that moment. Maybe later it'll help. But you don't say that now. You have to first act as if their experience is the truth. That's how you start empathy. Remember, each person in each situation has a different level of readiness and timeline for change, right? So be very, don't assume that everyone who's coming to you is ready for change. That means somebody is coming to you with a problem and they actually are not coming to get out of the problem. And you have to be patient. You have to assess, this person wants something different? How ready are they to change, to have improvement in their life? And it's okay. Some people, like I remember when I was training, I had a client, I'm like, I don't really know, like, I told my supervisor, I'm like, I don't know where we're going. Like, and me, I'm a very, like, objective, goal-oriented. I want to see progress all the time. I want to grow and everything. So I bring that bias I would bring it into my sessions. So I'm sitting with the client, and the client is just, I'm like, we're just kind of going in circles in the sessions, going in circles. We're not really going anywhere. And my supervisor said, sometimes for many, many sessions, the client just wants to have you next to them. And he gave me an example. He said, imagine you're going hunting, and you think, oh, when you go hunting, you want to go and shoot an animal and kill an animal. But sometimes the client is with you and they're saying, oh, look at that bird over there, and look at that bird over there, and look at that animal over there. And you could do that for all this time, right? You're like, wait, why are we here if we're not actually shooting? But you have to assess their level for readiness. And then, of course, we talked about the commonly known listening skills, like open body language. Like just watch. Sometimes we stand like this, right? So just watch yourself. If the person is doing that, it's okay to do that. It's called mirroring, right? But if they're not doing that, don't all of a sudden be like this, right? Or you're crossing your legs, right, when you're sitting down. Have open body language. Make eye contact. Have empathy. Empathy is essentially taking what they're saying and responding back with an emotion word, right? Like they're saying, oh, I'm going through this and this and this and that. You say, oh, wow, that sounds really tough. That's empathy, right? Like that's what it looks like. Of course, if you're going to do that correctly, you're going to try to understand what they're saying and ask yourself, what could they be feeling, right? And sometimes the easiest thing, some people actually tell you their own emotions. A lot of people don't, because they don't have the language and the vocabulary. They're not used to it. But some people tell you, that was so frustrating. Like, and my mom, she did this and this and that, and it was so annoying. And you say, wow, that sounds so annoying. And they're like, yeah, it was so annoying. And then like, okay, wow. And now they feel heard, right? And paraphrasing is playing back what you heard, right? A good way to paraphrase is to say, so what I'm hearing you say is, or so what I think you're saying is, or what I'm understanding is, or just to make sure I'm following, right? And you say it back, right? Or you say, and so like what you said was that this and this and this happened. And they say, yeah, that's a good way to make sure you're closing the loop. They say something, and the goal is to make sure they feel understood, okay? Any questions so far? I'm just kind of summarizing last night, the end of last night when people started falling asleep. Yes?
Just a quick question.
Yes.
When you said to kind of like accept what the other person is saying, and later on you switch your position, wouldn't that create some confusion? Like, for example, you accept that he said, my parents don't love me. But later on you tell them, hey, no, your parents do love you. So he's going to be like, which one is it? Did you listen to what I was saying, or?
Yeah. And when I said later, later could be 2 months later.
Not in the same.
Yeah. I mean, and in general, I'm gonna say this many times, which is, please, like, I want you guys to be awesome, okay? Stop trying to solve everything in one conversation. Just enough of that, right? Sometimes if you leave a conversation, maybe you feel like nothing happened. No, there was no movement or progress. But actually, trust was established. You were established as a resource, identified as a resource. That's a big deal. It's a big step. So you don't, maybe nothing changed in the problem, but you became a resource now. Now you're a resource. Now you're someone who knows what's going on. You're someone I've opened up to. And that could be a very good achievement by itself, right? We think that a young person comes up to us and we have to listen, empathize, give advice, solve the problem, everything, all in 30 minutes. Like, the problems the people are coming to us with have taken years to develop. You're not going to solve it in 30 minutes, right? And let me ask you, maybe their parents love them, but they're doing very unloving things. So you keep telling them, no, they love you, but the parent is actually doing very unloving things. Like they're telling their son or daughter, you're stupid, or what's wrong with you? Look at your brother, what he's able to do. That's very unloving, right? The parent is so so fixated on their goals that they're willing to use any type of force or guilt or shame to create the outcome because they're so fixated on it. That's very unloving. It's very selfish. A parent who's doing that is not being loving. Even I know in their heart they have love, but that's not the point. So what, right? So that's why if you just say, oh, but your parent loves you, you're like so out of this, like, their reality, like you're not a resource. Like you're basically useless. Like you're nothing. Like that's you're like thank you, thanks, but no thanks. I'll find someone else who's listening. Because literally my parents just told me I'm stupid. So, and you're telling me that they'll love me. What am I gonna do with you, servant? You get what I'm saying? Are you with me on that? Yeah, very, very good question, right? So, and maybe you have to go to the parents. And you see the challenge in church service is that there's no scope. It's everything. Do everything, right? Like I remember one time I went to a church. This is going to be a very long night. But so I remember one time I went to a church, and I was sitting with one of the abunas there, and I'm sitting there, we're chatting, we're having a conversation, and one of the younger abunas comes in, and I know both of them separately, like they're both very close with me. I love them both, and the younger abuna comes in, and he's just chatting with the older abuna that I was sitting with, and he says, "Oh, abuna, yeah," and it's like a Friday night or something. He's like, "Yeah, abuna, I'm gonna go to the funeral, and then I'm gonna go to the high school meeting." Like, that's like what. That's how much he has to switch contexts, right? Funeral, high school meeting, and then imagine sometimes you hear church servants or priests, funeral, serve the youth, wedding, like joy and mourning, all. What are you doing, right? And as a church servant, there's nothing you say no to, like in terms of the church service in general, not you individually, but in general, we take care of everything. You have medical problems, okay, come, we're gonna find a way to figure it out. Legal problems, okay. Administrative issues, you need to get a visa, you need to translate something, whatever it is, we gotta do it, right? So we need to we need to be broad and to appreciate all these details. I forgot why I said that though, but whatever. It's a good story. Yeah, it's a good story. It's a good point. All right. So everybody with me so far? Yeah. Okay. So now these are the available resources. The reason why I'm going to show this slide is because I want you to know what's out there, and I want you to have a better, more sophisticated understanding of what the resources that are available are. Okay. The first, I want to tell you the three groups: professionals, the community, and self. Okay? And God blesses all of these. Okay? God blesses all of these. Okay? Professionals. In the wisdom of Sirach, it says, and he gave skill to men that he might be glorified in his wonders. He gave skill, right? And keep it, and then it goes on to say a few verses later, keep in touch with your physician. That's what it says. For the Lord created him, and do not let him leave you, for you need him. Right? This is what the Bible says. In the book of Exodus, when they were building the tabernacle and all the things that were going to go into the tabernacle, there were many examples of this. One of them is there was a man named Bezalel who God gave understanding and wisdom and knowledge to design artistic works, right? Like to craft things, right? So, there are many professionals who are able to help. What do mental health professionals do? They diagnose and treat mental health disorders. Diagnose is like to say, yes, you have this. Treating is what are we going to do about it to make it better, right? And a medical doctor can provide medication as appropriate, right? So not a therapist, a counselor cannot give medication, but a medical doctor can, right? And then a professional can provide consistent therapy. Please, like as a servant, that's why you need to know the resource. You see, like, first of all, somebody likes to ask, well, what's the difference between Abuna and a therapist? Okay? First of all, assuming that Abuna is not also a therapist. So, that Abuna cannot spend 1 hour every Tuesday with the same person, right? Like every Tuesday, 1 hour at 8 p.m., 1 hour. We're going to do 1 hour every for 14 weeks, right? There's no time for that because there's no clear scope, right? If you do that with one person, there's only 168 hours a week or something like that, right? There's thousands of people to serve. It's not right to put that on the priest, right? So the priest and you and the professionals and the community and all these other people are all working together, right? And that's very important. Also, there's also like if you ever like learned, like if you were ever interested, you can find a counseling school and like sit in on a class, like just see what they're learning, right? Like what do they learn in there? What do they learn in therapy school, right? They're learning a lot of very important concepts, like how to start a conversation with a client. We learn like 10 to 15 different ways to see the same problem, right? We learn which method does the client want to work with, right? Like, have you guys ever heard of cognitive behavioral therapy, right? Cognitive behavioral therapy says that your thoughts affect your emotions and your behaviors, right? It starts with your thoughts. But there's also many other models of therapy. Which one do you choose? We learn how to choose them. You learn how to use each one. You learn many different types of questions. For example, a wife cheats on her husband. The first thing everybody's going to say, well, the wife really messed up, right? Yeah, the wife messed up. Yeah, of course. Is that the greatest mess up in the whole thing? We don't know. We don't know, right? Like maybe she cheated on her husband, but for 15 years he was beating her. Or maybe there were many other deceptions. There was a lot of abuse, right? So does that make her right for cheating? No. But there's a bigger story, right? So there's a lot of things that you're learning in counseling school that are very important, right? How to develop treatment plans and all these things. There's a lot of things, right? So that's what professionals do. And we need to like not ignore that aspect, right? There's also many chemical imbalances that people experience. Medication is very important for that. All right, and then of course professionals can teach non-professionals, right? Then there's the community, right? The centurion whose servant was sick sent his friends to Jesus to ask help, right? So the community was involved in the helping, right? We also saw the paralyzed man whom the friends let down. The community is involved in helping the person, right? So the community, which is you and me, needs to be present, right? And have regular follow-up, right? Like it's very beautiful to just, somebody tells you about something, and then you go home and you say, hey, it was so nice to speak with you. I'm here for you. I love you. I care about you. Let me know. We could always talk again. 3 days later, 2 days later, 1 day later, depending on the situation. Hey, how are you doing? I just wanted to check in. I'm praying for you, right? That's very, very valuable. Very, very valuable, right? That's the job of the community, to be present. Provide logistical support, just getting things from one place to another. I know someone who, they had a death in their family, and they realized, oh my gosh, when someone dies, there's so many logistical details that you need to take care of. Casket, funeral, cemetery, taking care of the body, transportation, clothes, food for the people who are grieving, like all these things, right? So they started a ministry to help in that area. If someone passes away, they call this person, right, or this group of people, and they help. That's what the community does. Provide validation and encouragement, of course. Mediation. Mediation means two people are fighting. Sometimes you need to get involved and help them, right? That's what the community can do. And teaching. You teach others, teach individuals. But also I want to say that self is a resource, right? The individual who is struggling should be a resource for themselves, okay? And that's where in Luke chapter 15, the prodigal son was a resource to himself. He said, I will arise. There was no one with him. He was by himself. And he just said, hey, I'm going to get up and I'm going to do something with my life, right? He just realized. It took him a very deep low to figure that out, but he figured it out. He said, oh my gosh. And he's looking at the food that the pigs are eating. And he's like, oh my gosh, like I wish I could eat what the pigs are eating. That's how poor he became. So he said, oh my gosh, how many of the servants in my father's house have food to eat? What's wrong with me, right? And he said, you know what, I'm going to get up and I'm going to do something, right? So of course, please be that person who takes care of yourself, and don't be so hard on people when they're not, but just know that that's the thing they should end up becoming. Also, yourself, the self, has ongoing self-care, like you take care of yourself. Make sure you're getting rest, taking care of your health, getting guidance and counsel and things like that. Seeking support, practicing healthy coping, and living a Christian lifestyle. All right. We spoke about common mistakes that Christians... Any questions about the resources? So we said the professionals are a resource, community is a resource, and the self is a resource, okay? And just think about those things, because when you're serving someone, we said that one of the things that you're supposed to ask yourself is, what resources are available to this person? And one of your ways of being a good servant is to connect the person in need with resources. You guys get what I'm saying? Right? Like, so you need to know what the resources are, right? All right, any questions on that? Okay, are you guys with me so far? We still haven't even talked about anxiety yet, but we will, I promise. But it was requested that we repeat this, so we're doing it. All right, and then common mistakes Christians make when responding to mental health challenges. We said overly spiritualizing the problem. Please, I gave a very extreme example. If someone is getting slapped by their parents all the time, you're not going to tell them to pray, right? No, we need to stop the slapping, right? Just stop that, right? So don't overly spiritualize every problem, right? Making the mental health problem less important than the spiritual problem. We are all we are a whole being, like we were saying. So it's not like our mind is less important than our spirit, right? And actually what you see, some people who have theological flaws in their understanding, they have a difficult time having a good spiritual life. If you don't know the right things about God, then who are you trying to connect with? So you can see that the mind is just as important as the spirit. And all of that is what it means to be made in the image of God, that all of these parts of you are integrated and working well. A common mistake is failing to refer to specialists or more experienced people, failing to invest the time to understand the person's circumstances, underestimating the value of being present, and failing to find support for yourself. I just want to, I definitely wanted to spend a minute on this point, but we didn't yesterday, is please do not think that the servant does not need care for themselves. Very, very important. I was asked a beautiful question, actually you'll find it. There's a podcast with one of the other churches here. And the question I got on the podcast was, do you think priests sometimes struggle with mental health problems? And I said, wow, there's probably no one ever asked that question. It's a very caring question. You know why? Because sometimes the people who serve the most are the most lonely. Nobody asks about them. Nobody asks about them. Nobody asks. How are you doing? And think about each other, right? You're serving together. You ask, how are you doing? Is everything okay? They have families too. We all have families, right? I remember last year, so I'll just share a personal example. Like last year for maybe 9 months or so, I was appreciating that, realizing about myself that even though I feel very loved in my community, I feel very loved, thank God, right? And I feel like I have a place in the community, like I have a way to add value. And I serve a lot, right? But nobody ever asks about me. Like, nobody asks. Like, basically, I'm going to say a very generalized statement. Nobody really cares how I'm really doing. And I'm not asking for anything. Thank God I took care of myself, right? I strengthened my relationship with my spiritual father. I found therapy. I restarted therapy, which was great. And I started to be very much more intentional about my friendships. And I started to talk with my friends about that. Like, hey, I feel like I need more support, right? I'm doing a lot of stuff in my life. I need help, right? So we all need to care for each other. Please don't neglect yourself. Don't forget, Jesus, who is God, spent a lot of time alone, right? He had only, his public ministry is 3 years, right? And he went alone, he spent time away from the people he's supposed to be spending time with, right? Like he came for these people and then he goes and spends time in the mountain to pray. And one time he's sitting on a boat and he's sleeping. And think about it. Jesus used to sleep, and what did we do? We're like, no, I gotta stay awake. I gotta have so much work to do. I gotta serve. I gotta this. I gotta that. But Jesus was sleeping, right? So, please don't fail to find support for yourself, and don't fail to care about each other. The community of servants is very important. That's why Jesus sent them apostles out 2 by 2, right? So they can support each other. Just last thing on this point. One time Abuna Dawood Lam'i was giving a talk in New York years ago, and he asked to our servants group, and he said if you're going to visit someone in the hospital, and you find out that one of your co-servants is in the hospital too, who do you visit first? And he said, go visit your co-servant. You got to care for each other, right? Because there's a lot, we're doing a lot, and we all need care. Pope Shenouda said, what good is it if you are like a street sign that tells everyone the right direction, but you yourself never get there? You're telling everyone where to go, but you don't get there. Don't be like a bridge that gets people to the other side, but you yourself never get there. So that's why we all need to care for ourselves. All right, now we're going to move to anxiety.